On today's show, the Houston Rockets force a Game 6 against the Warriors by dominating Game 5. Amen Thompson's impact as a two-way demon. The offense was humming thanks to Alperen Sengun's facilitating and so much more. It's all coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
With their backs against the wall and their season on the line, the Houston Rockets dominated Game 5 to force a Game 6, keeping things going in this series against the Warriors. What is up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Thursdays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets, where the best way you can help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing. Like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. Also, check out our Locked On Rockets newsletter. Would sincerely appreciate all of that support. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox. No console needed. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you so much for being an everydayer. Shout out to one of our everydayers, Pat, that I met at the Rockets game. Appreciate your kind words, Pat. Means a lot that you tune into the program. Rockets getting the 131-116 Game 5 win, a dominant performance by the Rockets starters. We'll get into what happened with the third stringers a little bit later into the game. This game was exactly what you wanted to see from the Rockets with their season on the line. Fred VanVleet led the way with 26 points. He was on fire. Amen Thompson, just an absolute two-way force in this game, recording an NBA historic stat line in the playoffs. Alperen Sengun flirting with a triple-double. Dillon Brooks was hitting a crazy number of shots. Jalen Green played better in this game. This game had everything you wanted for the Houston Rockets. And you know what a big win means in the playoffs.
Release the hounds.
Go tell Locked On Warriors in their YouTube comments that this series isn't over yet and that it's coming back to Game 7 here in Houston. Oh, man. This felt like a momentum-shifting game potentially for the Houston Rockets. And I remember saying before this series even started that as this series progressed, as we got to Games 4, 5, possibly 6, maybe 7, that the Rockets would start to look more and more comfortable as this series wore on. And that's exactly what's happening. The Rockets finally kind of looked like themselves offensively. And I think that's the biggest takeaway here, is just that this was, one, a really collaborative team effort. Everybody contributed in some capacity in this game on offense and on defense. Rockets had so many different contributors across the board, but they really started to feel like themselves again a little bit, like the team that played like a 2 seed for most of the season, the team that racked up 52 wins in the regular season. They did a lot of the little things. They attacked, and we're going to get into so much of what went down in this game, how the Rockets were able to build that early lead, what happened to the lead late when the third stringers came in, the impact of specific guys. And I think I want to start with Amen Thompson, because he was by far the best player on the floor for the Houston Rockets. And that's kind of wild that in this series, Alperen Sengun has had his games, Jalen Green had his game, and now Amen Thompson has had his game, where, you know, the Rockets have had different guys step up to be the quote-unquote best player for various games in this series. Amen Thompson was absolutely fantastic in this game. 25 points on 8 of 12 shooting, hit a three-pointer, a pull-up three-pointer, mind you, went 8 of 9 at the free throw line, had 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 5 steals, 3 blocked shots. He is just the third player in NBA playoff history to record that stat line or better. The other 2 players, Rick Barry and Hakeem Olajuwon himself. When I asked Amen Thompson about that stat line after the game, he was like, "That's tough." He's such a Gen Z kid. It's amazing. Look, he was an absolute two-way force in this game, setting the tone early on the defensive side and then taking over offensively as the game wore on. 5 steals. All 5 of his steals happened in the first half of play. And he had Steph Curry in hell. There's no other way to describe it. The Rockets' defense on Curry and Jimmy Butler in particular in this game was nothing short of incredible. They made everything difficult for those guys through the first half of play. Rockets went up 76-49 at halftime, damn near a 30-point deficit that they created at halftime simply because those two guys could not get themselves going. By the end of the game, Steph Curry only had 13 points. Jimmy Butler had 8 points. And Steph Curry had 12 shots to get those 13 points and also to go along with 3 turnovers. And those turnovers, some of the ones that Amen Thompson forced on Steph Curry were just absolutely chef's kiss fantastic. Amen was hounding him all night long. Hounding him. You know what it is. Hounding him.
Release the hounds.
That was actually super unintentional. But Amen Thompson, this is probably the best that he's guarded Steph all series. And you're seeing him become more accustomed to it, right? This is the 5th matchup. He's understanding some of Steph's tendencies. And I'm not going to say, oh, he's figured Steph out, right? Steph is the greatest shooter of all time for a reason. Nobody has ever figured Steph Curry out. But what you want to do is you want to make him uncomfortable. You want to face guard him. You want to be physical with him, right? And when I asked Dillon Brooks after the game, what his takeaways were from Amen Thompson's defensive performance, he was like, he took it personal, right? He takes the matchup personal, and that's what you've got to do when you're defending at the level that Amen Thompson's defending at and doing the things that he's doing. You have to take that personal. And Amen Thompson was so incredibly locked in on defense in this game, but it wasn't just the defense. It was the defense, and it was turning the defense into offense was the big one. He ripped Steph Curry in the first quarter and attacked Quentin Post, got up in the air, attacked, got blocked, or maybe the ball got deflected, whatever. And he got the ball back and then went back up and finished through contact. GP2 had fouled him, and he was just like yelling at GP2, like flexing on him, talking so much trash. He was talking trash to GP2 all game long, by the way. And Dillon Brooks actually had to step in and play peacemaker. Dillon, you know how wild you have to be, how crazy you've got to be for Dillon Brooks to step in and be the peacemaker on the basketball floor? That was insane to witness. He had a moment where he blocked Steph Curry from behind, where Jalen Green had picked up Steph and Amen Thompson was sagging off of GP2 and just came up behind Steph Curry and swatted the crap out of the basketball. Just Steph had no idea where Amen Thompson came from. And maybe the best moment to really kind of put an exclamation point on how good the Rockets had been in the first half of this game, turning their defense into offense, really frustrating the Warriors, was near the end of the first half. Amen Thompson ripped Steph Curry again just before halftime with like a minute left to play and went the other way for a breakaway slam that turned into an and one because Jimmy Butler fouled him. And just an absolute insane performance from him, really settling in. He talked about it a little bit after this game. He talked about it a little bit after game 4. It really feels like Amen Thompson is settling into this series maybe better than anybody else on the Rockets roster. From where he was in like games 1 and 2 and the struggles and kind of, the lights being a little bright, that kind of stuff, to where he is now, literally being the best player on the floor in game 5. This could be like a series defining moment or a series defining shift here for the Houston Rockets. If this is how Amen Thompson is able to play in game 6 and possibly the game 7 down the line, not even possibly, I'm just going to say it, in game 7 down the line, because the Rockets are going into the Bay, they're taking game 6 and they're coming back to Houston to force a game 7. Then I like the Rockets' chances of responding in this series, because this is the version of Amen Thompson that the Rockets look at as a future superstar. How can you not? He was an absolute two-way monster in this game and a huge part of why the Rockets were able to dominate the way that they did in Game 5. But he wasn't the only piece. The Rockets had great contributions across the board. The offense was humming in this game, the best we've seen the Rockets play offense all series long. And a big part of that was Alperen Sengun and his facilitating. We're going to talk about that in just a moment, as well as Dillon Brooks and the whole Steph Curry hand narrative that the Warriors seem to be trying to fabricate and all that mess. We're going to get into all of that stuff here in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Did you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? You can turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you are ready to go. Dive into hundreds of premium titles, including EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty, as easily as you stream your favorite shows. How do you game when you're not in front of your main setup, right? Maybe you're traveling, hotel stays, family visits, or even just hanging out in your bedroom, right? Maybe that's not where you have your Xbox posted up at. Fire TV Stick 4K makes it possible to keep playing from almost anywhere. And if you ever wanted to try out Xbox games without the, really big upfront investment cost in a console, Fire TV Stick 4K can be your low pressure way to start exploring. Plus, you get all the streaming access of a Fire TV 4K stick. You can stream all your favorite titles from Netflix, Amazon, Max, all the different streaming services. So head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, and Fire TV Cube. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. I don't know if I read the final score in the first segment, 131-116. I feel like I maybe did, but just to reiterate it, 131-116. And the game did not need to be as close as it was down the stretch. We're going to get into a little bit of how the Rockets built their big lead and then how it kind of evaporated there at the end of the third and beginning of the fourth quarter. But look, they straight out of the gate, Rockets set the tone early. They came out, they punched hard. And the Warriors really kind of failed to respond. This felt like a game where the Warriors were playing on their heels all night. This very much felt like a game where a team that had a chance to close out the Rockets, right? The Warriors came in up 3-1, could have closed out the Rockets and just ended the series in 5. Very much felt like they didn't take this game seriously. They played like a team that knew that they had multiple chances, that they knew that if they did lose this one, that they were going to be headed back home to the Bay and have a chance to close it out on their own home court. Kind of, that mentality of like playing with your food a little bit. So I don't want to take away anything that the Rockets did in this game, but it was also really weird to hear Steve Kerr, like before the game, talking about stuff like, well, if we have to, we might pull our starters and, we'll rest them up for game 6 and stuff. And that's just like a weird mentality to have when you could have just taken game 5. And don't get it twisted. I'm happy that they didn't, but just like that whole mentality, I think, is just flawed from the jump. And apparently there was even like a halftime conversation with Draymond Green where he wanted, Steve Kerr to give the starters a chance, like 5 minutes there in the third quarter to see if they could dig themselves out of the hole that they created. And they still weren't able to do it. So, again, credit to the Rockets, credit to their dominance. I said it at halftime. Look, this is, there's still a lot of game time left, but if you come out and keep your foot on the gas in the third quarter, Steve Kerr will wave the white flag. The only question was a matter of when he'd pull the starters, and he pulled them about midway through the third quarter, which is exactly what you want to see if you're the Rockets. And the way that they built that lead up, the way that they came out of the gate so strong, and that the reason that the offense looked the best that it has all series, a big part of that was the ball movement and the facilitation offensively, as well as the aggression that they were playing with and being rewarded for their aggression. There were a few different things to pay attention to. First of which, the free throw shooting. Absolutely unreal free throw shooting by the Rockets in this game. They hit their first 14 free throws. Not a typo, not a clerical error. The Rockets went 14 of 14 at the free throw line. They were in the bonus early in the first quarter. They were aggressive. They were attacking constantly, and they were being rewarded because of it. They finished 32 of 38 at the free throw line. That's 84.2%. After free throws had absolutely killed them in multiple games earlier in this series, they took care of business at the free throw line, capitalizing on the Warriors' fouls, capitalizing on being in the bonus. That was a big part of the early start to the game, and again, rewarding the aggression of many players up and down the roster. The ball movement was the other part. Rockets ball movement was absolutely fantastic in this game. And it kind of starts with the man in the middle with Alperen Sengun. When he's facilitating the way that he was, which by halftime, the Rockets, and look, this game was effectively over at halftime, right? And we'll get to the mess with the third stringers and whatnot here in a second. But by halftime, the Rockets had 16 assists on 25 made shots. Alperen Sengun was responsible for 8 of those 16 assists. The Rockets are at their deadliest when he is facilitating the basketball. Mostly because when LP is facilitating, it generally means the Rockets are generating very high quality shots, right? When LP is creating shots for his teammates, it generally means he's drawing a double or setting a hard screen with like a DHO action or something to get guys absolutely wide open looks. But it wasn't just Alperen Sengun. It was the ball movement from everybody. Different guys getting paint touches and then kicking the ball out to 3-point shooters, be it Amen Thompson or Jalen Green had an absolute beauty of an assist to Tari Eason in the corner for a 3-pointer at one point. Just different guys breaking down the Warriors defense, really kind of stretching them out, like getting a paint touch and then getting the kick out to a shooter and recognizing some of those reads that they were missing earlier in the series. When Ime talked about earlier in the series, the first 2 home games and whatnot, about, playing in a crowd too much and playing in traffic and missing your reads. Like, that's what he was talking about. Amen Thompson had a great couple, drives, getting into the paint, realizing it a mismatch. And rather than just trying to like ham fist it and make something happen out of nothing, recognizing things and then driving, kicking out to the shooter, and then those extra passes as well, not just settling for the first shot that is available, but passing up good shots for great shots. And that's how the Rockets offense was able to get off to such a strong start. Now at the end of the day, you've also got to knock down shots, right? Like, the shots have to go in. You could generate the highest quality shots in the world or the most wide open shots ever. You've actually got to be able to convert on them. And this game, it felt like the Rockets shooters all really showed up. Fred VanVleet was absolutely on fire from downtown. 26 points, 4 of 6 shooting from deep, 8 of 13 overall, including 6 of 6 at the free throw line. Dillon Brooks, 24.7 of 13 shooting overall, 2 of 7 from 3-point land. The 3-point shooting, not quite as great for Dillon Brooks, including one of his 2 makes. He banked it in. So, it's not your usual shooting performance from Dillon Brooks from beyond the arc, but he was also absolutely taking advantage of smaller players inside the arc. And that was the other big element here, as we saw in game 1, the Rockets really trying to hunt Steph Curry, basically to their, they turned what should have been an advantage into a disadvantage because they very much disrupted the flow of their offensive game by spending way too much time looking for the Steph Curry mismatch. Instead, in this game, they just exploited Steph Curry within the flow of the game. A big thing was the Rockets just got into their sets so much quicker in this game. They brought the ball up. They were initiating actions a lot quicker. They had so much more time to work with on the shot clock versus the Warriors, who, because they were dealing with the Rockets' stifling defense in this game, they were playing late into the shot clock on a lot of their offensive possessions. So, like, the dichotomy between these two and how they were playing offensively in this game was like there was a gulf between them. The Rockets were the aggressors, and there were so many moments where the Rockets would push the ball up the court and without forcing the issue, without trying to, get a screen to force a mismatch, they just recognized, okay, great, Steph is guarding Dillon Brooks. Get the ball to DB immediately, right? And instead of getting the ball to Dillon Brooks or to whoever else with Steph Curry on a mismatch with like 10 or 12 seconds left on the shot clock, they'd push the ball up the court. Dillon would get a quick seal on Steph, and then, the Rockets would still have 15 to 18 seconds on the shot clock to work with. And those possessions where Dillon Brooks got Steph on his back, tried to post him up, back him down a little bit, played into the Rockets' favor a lot in this game. And the Rockets continued to exploit that mismatch, whoever Steph Curry was guarding. If it was Dillon Brooks, they were posting him up. There was moments where LP had a great pass over the top of the defense to Dillon Brooks, and he caught it midair and just, it was like a little lob pass And Dillon was able to finish it right at the rim over the top of Steph Curry. One of those beautiful dimes from Alp. Alp had another one later in the game to Tari Eason, who ducked inside, got a good seal on Steph, used his size right there at the rim. And it felt like the Rockets offense that we saw at points, the best version of the Rockets offense throughout the regular season, where they did actually do things by committee, right? Different guys stepping up, scoring in different ways, baseline cuts, finishing at the rim, finishing through contact, forcing the refs to blow their whistle, right? You don't generate 38 free throws without absorbing a significant amount of contact and really forcing the issue offensively. And I'll tell you what, if the refs had whistled this series like this in games 1 through 4, Rockets might be done with the series by now. Because this is a Rockets team that was one of the tops in the NBA at free throw attempts per game. They're the most physical team in the NBA, and the refs certainly rewarded the Rockets in this game considerably. And my concern is that they swing things way back in game 6 back towards the Warriors' favor. Now, it's not like the Warriors didn't attempt any free throws in this game. They got 22 of their own free throws, 15 to 22 at the line for them. But the free throw shooting certainly helped prop up the Rockets' offense a lot. They deserved it. They drove to the basket. They got fouls. They were physical. They were the attackers. They were the aggressors in this game. But just across the board, they shot the ball the best that they have all series long. 43.3% from downtown, 13 of 30 from long distance, and 55% shooting overall. You combine all of that offensive outburst with the way that the Rockets played their defense, so easily their best offensive performance of the series. They were still really, really strong defensively until things kind of broke down there at the end with the third stringers. Just an absolute masterclass performance with their backs against the wall here in game 5. Coming up, do you want to talk about what happened at the end with the third stringers, how the Rockets were forced to go back to their starters to close this one out after it looked like it was over midway through the third quarter, as well as we'll hear from Dillon Brooks post-game talking about how he's guarding Steph Curry and final thoughts from this one. We're going to get there in just one moment. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, so Rockets put a thumping on the Warriors in this game. Steve Kerr waved the white flag in the third quarter, and it looked like literally it was game over, right? On to game 6. Pat your back. Warriors folded after 30 minutes. Fantastic game from the Rockets, right? Ime plays out the rest of the third quarter with, versions of the usual bench brigade and different stuff like that. Start of the fourth quarter, he inserts the true garbage time lineup, right? He's rolling out Reed Shepherd, Jock Landale, and the Rockets literally only were able to score 2 points across the first 3 minutes of run in that fourth quarter. Just slowly letting the Warriors third stringers chip away until the third stringers for the Warriors got the lead down to 17, prompting Ime Udoka to reinsert his starting lineup in order to finish the game out, which is exactly what you didn't want, right? It's very disappointing that the Rockets bench brigade couldn't capitalize on that and couldn't all you needed to do was keep the scoreboard moving. That's it. Instead, we saw turnovers, we saw missed shots, we saw lack of offensive flow. It was a nightmare out there with that lineup, unfortunately. And maybe you make the argument that Ime should have, let the starters cook for a little bit longer, that he pulled them too early in the game. I don't think he pulled them too early. The Rockets were flirting with a 30-point lead. A 30-point lead. Third stringer should have been able to come in and just take care of business and just keep the scoreboard pushing to be able to get this win and get the starters the deserved rest that they needed ahead of game 6. So it's unfortunate that the starters did have to come back into this game. But not only did they come back in, but then you had, the Warriors third stringers kept it going even when the Rockets starters got back into the game. And so much so that it culminated in Pat Spencer kind of like throwing Dillon Brooks out of bounds on a loose ball play. And Dillon Brooks kind of took exception to that. It was a bit of a, cheap shot by Pat Spencer. And then Pat Spencer gets into it with Alperen Sengun, gives him not they called it a headbutt on the broadcast, but like not like a headbutt, but like just kind of like leaning his head in at Sengun, and then Trace Jackson Davis came over and like shoved Sengun, and he like was like, whoa, got thrown way far back. Just a whole altercation incident, whatever. And Pat Spencer got ejected. So if you'll remember when I asked Dillon Brooks who the first player to get ejected this series would be, he was like, not me. I'll let one of them do it. I feel like Pat Spencer would have been like plus like 50,000 to be the first player ejected in this series, but he gets ejected. And I'll be honest, I was tightening up a little bit there, watching the scoreboard, waiting to see if the Warriors cut it to potentially single digits, right? Would Steve Kerr reinsert his starters and try to make it a game? You saw Steph Curry over on the bench kind of, tying up his shoes, looking like, making a case for wanting to get back in the game. And ultimately Kerr elected not to do that. So Rockets were able to coast and get to the finish line after kind of, squandering that massive lead that they did have. And that's kind of it. I mean, it was just like the wildest, 12 minutes of basketball with the Warriors third stringers and them coming in and playing with more heart, more hustle, more intensity than the starters did at all in this game for Golden State. And again, it very much felt like some complacency on the behalf of the Warriors in this one. But one narrative that started circulating was the idea that Dillon Brooks is intentionally trying to hurt Steph Curry and his shooting hand, the taped up thumb that he has. And so Dillon was asked about this post game, and this is what he had to say about it.
Dillon, one of the Warriors broadcasters tonight said he thought you were intentionally trying to swipe down on Curry's thumb, and Kerr was asked about it and said it happens around the league, that it's allowed by the rules, so players throughout the league do that. What do you think about that?
No, I've been playing the game. Shoot. If you're gonna come play the game injured or whenever you got, it's all about the game. If I had an injured ankle, I would attack that ankle every single time. So, whatever they're saying on the broadcast, they can keep saying it.
First off, absolutely love that no nonsense answer from Dillon Brooks. I swear he's incredible. When he was asked about the Pat Spencer altercation, all he had to say was he's talking too much, and that was it. I love me some Dillon Brooks, man. He's awesome. But look, what's wild is Warriors fans have this. First off, the collective amount of CTE amongst Warriors fans and the fact that they think that this is like a new development. First off, Dillon Brooks has been doing this on closeouts since he joined the Houston Rockets. And he's probably doing it well before that, right? In his days with the Memphis Grizzlies as well. The way that the NBA rules contact when a player shoots the basketball, it's called like the high five defense, right? You are allowed to high five a shooter, to make contact with the hand of a shooter after the ball is released. Now you can't like hit the forearm, the elbow, whatever on release, whatever like this. There is some gray area in there. But literally go back. You can go back 2 years ago. You can probably go back to his Memphis Grizzlies tenure and watch how Dillon Brooks closes out on any shooter. This isn't a Steph Curry special. This isn't him trying to be dirty and hitting Steph's thumb or any of that stuff. No, this is how Dillon Brooks closes out on shooters. And it's allowed by the NBA textbook based on how the NBA officials call things. It is a legal basketball play. So no, Dillon Brooks isn't being dirty with these attacks, with what he's doing, guarding Steph Curry and how he's, defending these actions. But on top of that, talk about the pot calling the kettle black once again, because if you so remember, years ago when James Harden was dealing with the Warriors, I want to say it was game 2. No, maybe it was game 2. It was all the way back in 2017. And Harden came into a game against the Warriors and he had an injured wrist, right? His left wrist, his shooting wrist was hurt. There was a play in the game in the third quarter where Harden was trying to like get around Draymond Green, or Draymond was guarding him on a switch or something off ball. And Draymond literally swiped down at James's wrist very intentionally, just like took a shot at James's wrist because James was kind of like, had his hands up like he was getting ready to like shake Draymond and go, run a route or whatever to get the ball. And Draymond literally punched James's wrist and admitted to doing it after the game. So Warriors fans, just shut the hell up. Like stop with all the crying and the complaining about the officiating and about dirty play, physical. Just stop it. Stop it. Okay. Warriors have benefited so much more over the years from Draymond's dirty play and antics and from the officials, the moving screens, the Golden State moving screens. Like, I don't want to hear it, man. Just absolutely ridiculous. So just figured I'd run that back a little bit, since that's kind of a narrative that's out there doing circles and whatnot. But elsewhere in this one, I will say it was disappointing too that, early on, one of the things that helped set the tone for the Rockets early was Jalen Green, because he, in the first few minutes, in just the first couple minutes of this game, Jalen looked night and day different from last game. And I'll admit, full stop, I crashed out extra hard on Jalen last game. I did, and part of the reason being is that I have such high expectations for him as a player, and I know that he's got high expectations for himself as well. And to see kind of, the just lack of involvement right from last game, and to know what he's capable of, to see the talent on display, to see the highs, but then to see those games where he just flat out disappears or doesn't rise to the occasion. I get it. It's his first playoff series. I probably took it a step too far by saying that the experiment should be over. That was an unfair response to Jalen's game 4 production. But I need to, and so where I'm at is I'm disappointed that he bumped knees with Steph Curry early in this game, had to go back to the Rockets locker room, got worked up by the medical staff, and then was able to come back into the game later on. But you could tell like he wasn't 100%, but he's an absolute Iron Man. He's played through a variety of different injuries this season. Credit to him for powering through all the different little, bumps and bruises and injuries that, he could have easily taken some time off for. Ime Udoka has applauded him for his durability throughout the season. And this is just another instance of that, right? But it felt like he was getting off to a strong start in this game. Literally, first bucket of the game was Jalen Green driving in, finishing through contact, switching hands midair, and generating an and one play, first bucket of the game. First foul on Draymond Green in this one. And like, then, a few possessions later, knocks down a 3-pointer. Like, it was, Jalen looked like he was off to a hot start, and then unfortunately bumped knees with Steph, and then just, kind of wasn't, probably not 100% the rest of the way, unfortunately. And then other guys had it going offensively, so he didn't have to shoulder as much of that burden and was able to just kind of take more of a back seat and let the team do its thing in this one. But I will say, I do need to see something. But like before this series is over, look, Rockets only have one guaranteed game left in the series. They've got game 6, right? And maybe you don't get, 24 from Dillon Brooks or 26 for Fred VanVleet or, the 9 dimes from Alpy, right? Guys getting set up. The Rockets are going to need Jalen Green to have another really strong game in this series. It might not have to be game 6. Maybe everybody else is still firing all cylinders. Maybe the shooters are locked in, and, maybe game 6 doesn't need to be the Jalen Green game, quote unquote. But I need to see something more from him. I need to see another game where he is able to put the team on his back and do his job offensively as the lead option, like he did in game 2. But his attacks, his drives, his reads were better here in game 5. And his presence, right, was much more felt, even outside of offensively in game 5. He had 8 rebounds. Second highest rebounder on the team behind Alperen Sengun with 9. That's Jalen using his athleticism, making an impact, doing things to provide an impact outside of just ball goes in the hoop, right? And that's going to be the key for Jalen, is what is he doing outside of scoring the basketball to stay on the floor, instead of Ime being able to go to a guy like Tari, Eason, or Jabari Smith Jr. or Steven Adams deeper on the bench, right? So for Jalen, I want to see him play the best he can against this Warriors team. I want to see him put up another stat line like he did game 2 and have another dominant performance. And I'll tell you what, if the Rockets can get the version of Al P that existed in games 1 and 4, or even also the games 2 and 5. Like, Al P's been great for most of this series. Just one bad game for him. If they get this continued version of Amen Thompson, who was dominant at the end of game 4 and dominant all of game 5, plus the best version of Jalen Green, like if you can get them to merge together, like Voltron or whatever, and all combine their efforts in game 6 to bring it back for a game 7, that would be probably the perfect outcome for this Rockets team. Couldn't picture it any other way. That's all I've got as far as thoughts on this game. I do want your thoughts, your reaction to the Rockets game 5 win, keeping their season alive. Things go back out to the Bay for game 6. Can they get one on the road and bring it back home for the ultimate game 7 between the Rockets and Warriors? Give me your thoughts in the YouTube comments. Remember, the best way to help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing. Like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. Also, check out our Locked On Rockets newsletter. Would appreciate all of that support. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.